Welcome everyone to the Wednesday morning series. This is a little bit of a switcheroo. Troy is here today. David will be on the fourth week of the month, and on the fifth week of the month, we have a special edition. Our COO, who's also an attorney, is going to be joining us to talk about the legal implications or considerations, for those that are considering divorce or how to separate. He will be answering questions in a general way, but we've had kind of a bit of a series. We started in May with Kristen Snowden, Should I Stay or Go? We had Debbie Allen in May with two partners, one who chose to stay, one who chose to leave. No judgment. This is all just information. And then Deborah Doak, who is a mediator, did a webinar in September, a special edition. And she talked about, if you're going to stay, make sure you stay well. If you're going to leave, like, have a plan and leave, whatever it is. Again, no judgment, but that was another good component. And then, Stuart will be providing some legal information. So those are kind of the special edition. And I mentioned before I hit record that Angela Spearman did a special webinar yesterday that is posted on Seeking Integrity's website about her kind of the parallels. She and her family have just been experiencing the wrath of Helene, and and looking at Milton coming, and what will that bring, and talking about the trauma and how to move forward, and grounding, and so it was really good, and that is posted on our website as well. So all that, Troy, and we still don't have questions. So
No,
at the end of
we're hoping.
I know at the end it's going to be like, oh, sorry, we ran out of time. So
yeah,
but please.
we switched places, me and David, because I'm going to be at the boot camp that I'm doing for men in recovery at the end of this month. So we can put links to that. And then you have another women's retreat coming up as well, I think.
We moved it to January through a series of things, but yes, the Empowered Women's Retreat is amazing and healing. And guess what? We don't talk about him, like it's really healing for the partners. This is, like the focus is on, and Troy out, like I'm going to, me, ADD, but I did the Awaken retreat here in Phoenix, the breath work, the deep breath work. It was a 6-hour thing. Very cool. I mean, there's like 120, I don't even know how many people were in that and doing this, breath work. That's the type of breath work we do. It's not, I love the, 4-7-8 breathing, the box breathing, all of those things. This is completely different. And we do that in the Empowered Women's Retreat, anger processing, boundaries, internal and external boundaries, but just being in the presence of the women who are willing to own that, that they're healing for themselves is I'm grateful for that. So that will be January 24th through 27th. Separately, we have the Betrayed Partner work group starting today. Angela Spearman hosts that. And Troy has starting November 6th, I think, it's the attachment wounds, and I've been pointing people towards that too. A work group is not therapy. It is not treatment. Good therapists are recommending clients come to those. They are live facilitated. These are not just watch a video, and they are an opportunity to really, get some education and help around, different topics. So the Betrayed Partner is today, Troy, and you can talk a little bit about the attachment wounds, but we've got, healthy intimacy, sex addiction 101, separate from porn addiction 101, inner child, why men struggle to love. We're going to have a new boundaries course, probably starting in January. Debbie McCrae will be offering that. And those that will be, she is the queen of helping identify what are healthy boundaries, both internal and external. So it will be really a useful course geared to partners. So those are some things that are all on Seeking Integrity under work group tab, low cost, high impact. So we would invite you to consider those. But before we get to the question, because yay, we've got a question, please you share just a little bit about your work group, and why it's very different than what you do with the guys on Fridays.
Yeah, so the Healing Attachment Wounds work group is based on the Finding Peace workbook that I wrote a few years ago, and it helps men understand what's driving their addiction. So it explores like the root cause of what has caused the addiction to be where it's at, and how we can start to attend to some of those wounds from the very beginning of growing up and those kind of things, and how that, when we start to practice self-compassion and learn how to manage shame, can really increase our ability to stay in recovery, to be able to have better ability to maintain accountability, and there's not as much shame that we carry around with us. So the men who've come before have said it's been amazing. So
Well, and so a couple things I'm gonna tag on. I just put both the work group tab and then Troy's authentic men boot camp. I put both of those in the chat separately, and I've shared on before. I personally did, his retreat, and I've been doing this stuff for a while, and there's always more to learn, and there's always more healing to take. I will also note that, when you look at the work group tab or the work group tab in the order, it starts with Sex Addiction 101. If you do not have a solid foundation of recovery, trying to do that deeper work is dysregulating. So we invite you to get a solid plan, Sex Addiction 101 or Porn Addiction 101. They very similar content. We used to have one group and now we have two, because we had some of the guys that were that only looked online and were very isolated. We found that having them in a group, they were able to relate more to the group. So but otherwise the content, it's getting a solid foundation, getting a relapse prevention plan. What do you need to do? What is sex addiction? It's not about sex, so just like Troy was talking about, it's those deeper wounds. So get a solid foundation and then start working at attachment wounds and healthy intimacy and inner child, all of those things. So we offer a wide range of resources, but they're in a specific order on purpose. Okay, we have questions. Betrayed here. I think I developed disorganized attachment once trust is broken or I'm really hurt in a relationship. I've chosen to stay in a relationship to see what recovery can look like. How can I do so in a healthier way instead of pinging back and forth with myself and with disorganized attachment? I get turned off non-sexual so easily now. So can you clarify, please, Troy, like what is attachment wounds? What is it? Attachment style, attachment wounds, and the broken trust and what that does, please.
yeah, so the attachment theory, we have secure attachments in the middle, and then there's a spectrum that goes out from either side. And so on one hand, on the one side, we have anxious attachment style, which means that I'm very worried that you're going to leave. I'm very worried that we're not securely connected. I'm things don't feel very safe, and so I have a high anxiety. I tend to be really clingy, asking lots of questions, holding on, don't want to. I feel uncomfortable when we're apart from each other. And then on the other side of that spectrum is the avoidant attachment, which is I want to be connected, but it's scary for me to be vulnerable and to open up and let you into my world. And so I'm going to put walls up and I'm going to do things to protect myself so that I don't get hurt. When she says she has a disorganized attachment style, basically what she's saying is that sometimes she is anxious and sometimes she is avoidant. And we never know which one it's going to be from day to day. So there are moments when somebody who has a disorganized attachment style is very anxious about where this relationship is going to go and are we good and things are going to be all right. And then then she'll she'll reach out and she'll pursue. And then when things start to get a little bit connected, she'll move over to the avoidance side because she's been burned, she's been hurt. And so she's like, oh, I'm not sure that I want to be vulnerable and open up and let you in, because it was scary last time. You did some things that hit my attachment wounds. And so now I'm going to put my walls up. And so I have disorganized attachment styles used, by the way. So I flip from one to the other depending on what's going on. And that can be really confusing for the people that you're trying to form a connection with. So your question was, you want to see what recovery looks like and how can you do so in a healthier way instead of pinging back and forth within yourself. So these are simple things that I'm going to say. They're not the end all be all. They're just some thoughts, but it's easy for me to say that, harder to execute that. So the number one thing that you want to be able to work on is not taking personally your partner's behavior. And that sounds absolutely stupid when I say that out loud, but his behavior isn't about you. But what tends to happen when we have betrayal or rejection or all those kind of things is over the course of our lives, we've made up these beliefs about us or other people. I'm not enough. There's something wrong with me. If I had only done this or that or the other thing, then maybe he wouldn't have done this or that. And all of that's faulty core belief thinking. And so if I can get to a place where I know that I'm enough and I matter and that I'm worthy of love, and my partner is still doing all that stuff, that helps me stay grounded. And then I can make better decisions about whether I want to stay or whether I want to go, whether I want to extend some compassion and patience because they're trying to figure things out, rather than getting into that frenzy and that panicky place of like, oh my gosh, this is not going to work out very well. So doing that with a qualified professional helps. Doing that in a group with other women helps. But that's probably the number one thing, is to help you know that this isn't his, whatever he's doing isn't about you, and that you are enough. It's hard for us to believe that sometimes. Then you're experiencing the fight or flight response. And so part of that is learning how to get yourself grounded, learning who else in your life you can have healthy relationships with. It's interesting, there's a study that people can participate in, and you can identify 4 different people in your life, and you take the test, and then it will tell you what kind of attachment style you have for each one of those people. And it's not always the same. You may have an anxious attachment style with your mom, and an avoidance attachment style with your husband, and a secure attachment style with your best friend. And that's because the dynamics of that relationship define the safety of it, right? So if you're feeling safe in a relationship, you're probably going to have a more secure attachment style. If it doesn't feel safe, we're going to have this disorganized attachment style. So part of that is figuring out, okay, who do I have in my life where I can feel safe and talk about some of the things that are really scary and get some of those thoughts that are in my head outside of my head so that they're not playing ping pong inside. So those are some of the thoughts I have. And hopefully your partner will continue to work on his recovery, because the more that he works on his recovery, the more he'll learn how to create safety in the relationship, and you won't have to be running back and forth. But his behavior does not define who you are.
Great. And yes, it does sound, so simple, but it's so difficult to implement it, but that's why, again, the betrayed partner work group, you'll be with other people. You'll be able to, to connect with them and, ask the questions of like, you know, I remember early in recovery, it was like I had to check in with other people because my reality, I couldn't trust that what I thought was reality. And with betrayed partners, your whole reality has been shaken to the core. So, and I always say if an addict, especially early in recovery, is or early on a journey is, or an active addiction is, lips are moving, it's probably lies, and lying is denial, starting lying myself and everyone else. And I'm not being trite. I'm not being, snarky. I'm just going like, this is the reality of the situation. So betrayed partners, believing, what a person who's just starting on a journey, is saying, is problematic, watching what their actions are. But Erin Snow has talked about her journey, both as clinical director of our residential treatment program, where she's working with the addicts, and she's been, candid on our webinars about her experience. And she knew like she had to stay regulated. She had to do the work to stay regulated within herself, and not, like she knew that it was her partner's job to do his work or not. And nothing she was going to do or say was going to change that. But if she didn't work on regulating herself, that ping ponging, it's so crazy making, is what comes to mind. Not that you're crazy, but it's crazy making to have this stuff going, back and forth. So what do you need to do to regulate? And we've got lots of, we've shared lots of things, about that. We talked about it a little bit ago. I love the 4-7-8 breathing and the box breathing, and just to take 2 minutes and, regulate, then guess what? My thinking brain comes back online, and it isn't, from a place of fear. So lots of tools. I'm so glad you're here and asking, the questions, and there's lots of support, on our site for you too. Okay. Hi, how do I stop loving my husband? He has chosen his addiction over his family. We are separated for a year and are not divorced as we have younger kids, and I need him in there for life. I know he's acting out, and I feel the stab in my heart every day when I know he is having sex with other women. Mm.
That makes me sad, number one. I'm sorry that is happening to you. So that is an interesting question, because you need him in the children's life, and yet you don't want him in yours, right? So there's a couple of paths. One is to just hate his guts, which I'm not saying that's a healthy way, but that's one way. The other one of the I can't remember the TED Talk that I watched, but there was a TED Talk that this guy gave about how to do that. And what he had people do is he had them write a list of all the things that their partner does that drives them nuts, all the things that their partner does that have hurt and betrayed them. And he doesn't do that for you to develop resentment and anger. He does that as a reminder of, this is why I can't trust this guy or this girl, whatever. This is why I can't trust my partner. This is why my partner is not safe for me or not right for me. So the list you would write why my partner is not the right guy for me, or my husband. And then you write a list, and then you carry it around with you. Either you put it on your phone, because you usually have your phone everywhere. And then when you feel the temptation to like maybe open your heart, you pull it out and you're like, oh yeah, that's why. So that's one way. And I've had people do that, but that's usually when they never want to see the person ever again, and they don't have kids together. So I don't know if that one will work so well. There are a couple of books that are called Uncoupling. It's called Uncoupling, and you can find some on, if you just go to Amazon or whatever, you can Google them. But the process is, how do we uncouple the relationship but still remain, especially for the kids, friendly, for lack of a better word. And so some of my clients have found that to be helpful of how do you slowly kind of take the strings of attachment that I've had with my spouse and cut them, but still remain friends or at least cordial with them. So that's the challenge for you, because right now you're seeing his behavior and you've identified he's choosing other women instead of you, and that breaks my heart. So there's not an easy answer, but hopefully I gave you a couple of suggestions.
Yeah, it is really challenging. And I see with partners, when they become more indifferent, the love and hate or whatever, at some point, that you're still in it, it's when there's indifference, like, I just don't care. And there's some paradoxes in here. So yeah, I mean, so you share children, you can love that you have amazing children, because of the relationship you had, and it can still be he's not safe to be in a partnership. You can have love for that, he is showing up and, doing some life things, with the children. Okay, and he's still not showing up for you. He's still, Dr. Rob will say, with the guys that come to our residential program, because they'll go, well, I'm still a good father, and he's like, you're not a good father if you're hurting their mother. And we've had partners, who are moms who are going like, I can't be the mom I want to be because I'm so churned up about all of these things. So my hope for you is really work on your healthy boundaries for you. And I do think it's important of like, I mentioned the Kristen Snowden video. It was from May of this year. It's on our website, and she pulled, I think it was 10 questions. It might be 12, but 10 questions from Dr. John Gottman. And it was like, it's just journal about those things. So it's kind of like, it would help you create the list that Troy was talking about is, well, here's some great things about him. And here's some, not so great things. And it can help you identify, is this a relationship that is, how can we co-parent? Because, clearly he's, out and about. So how can we co-parent, and how can I move to a place of acceptance for what the relationship is? So you're also in that in between, because you are still legally married and you are still parents. And so there's a little bit of separation, but it's kind of like, like you're separated, but there's not anything else happening. He kind of gets to go, do whatever he's going to do, and then show up and, take care of the kids at point. So it's he's kind of, pinging into your world and then out again. So it makes it very difficult. And the more that you have support and regulation for you, I think the better you'll be able to hang on to you, regardless of what he's doing. So okay, the next one. I'm the betrayed, and it drives me nuts when my partner leaves out details or embellishes other details when sharing with his groups and therapists about conversations and fights that have happened between us. Truth and honesty is very important to me. Accuracy and details about anything and everything are important to me. I have justice sensitivity. I have high morals. Being portrayed as something I'm not angers me. How do I deal with this when it gets stirred up within me, when his stories and portrayals are not fully accurate? I worry about him not getting the support he needs because he's not being fully authentic and possibly throwing me under the bus in the meantime.
I hear you. I can only speak for myself and tell you that whenever a client is telling me about an argument or whatever, I take everything they say with a grain of salt, because I know that the chances are their shame is running this conversation and they're not being as honest and open as they need to be. Their shame has convinced them that they need to tell the story in a certain way to shine a nice light on them, make the other person look like the bad guy. So I can understand and have want to validate that is really, really frustrating, especially if you're like in a couples session and they're missing that. The idea in recovery is to be, I think step 4 says to do a fearless and moral inventory And so part of that is being fearlessly honest, fearlessly, fearlessly truthful. What hijacks that is shame, and shame will hijack it every time. So I hear it, and it's not an excuse for their behavior. As long as they are not dealing with their shame, they're going to keep doing that, because that's their sense of protection, and that's unbearable, and it's infuriating, and it's not honest. So I just want to validate that it is not, it drives people crazy when they do that, and there's nothing you can do or I can do or the therapist can do or the 12-step sponsor can do to make them stop doing that, until they learn how to develop their shame resilience and recognize that I can be completely honest, and I can admit that I've done some things that were bad or not morally right, but I'm still a decent human being. And I want to make amends for the things that I've done. But for some people, they don't get there.
So yeah. I'm a really straight shooter, and so if I had somebody that was constantly complaining about their spouse, I'd be going, if I got your spouse in here right now, and like, would your spouse be giving me the same version of the story? And for and I say this often to partners who are, he goes to therapy every week. And I was like, if he goes to therapy every week and he's complaining about you or whatever else, and he's not taking accountability, and responsibility for his actions, like so this to me is just blame shifting. And yes, it, like he needs to, stop living in the shame, but real like, this is not somebody to me who is in recovery. He may be not acting out, but if he's still, going, well, it's all of these other reasons, including my partner. But good therapists and good sponsors see through that BS. So, and this is not about, and you hold your head high. You have high morals. You have, a high sense of justice. All good. And what is the truth. And him lying to himself and everyone else. I mean, that to me is still someone who is not on a real recovery path. He at best is maybe not acting out, but this is somebody, that needs more help and more accountability. So if he's really working a program, doing the 12 steps 4 through 9, or that's housekeeping. We work on taking accountability for what we've done and moving forward, making amends, but I don't know if this is like, he's stopped doing the behaviors, 4 weeks ago or 4 years ago. So for you, I'm glad you're here. And what are your healthy boundaries? Maybe you need to not listen in on any of those conversations. Like, honestly, that's where I would start. That has to be dysregulating. That's the story he's telling himself, and other people, but what the truth is. So so if he really gets on a recovery path, things will look different than what you're seeing, with him right now. Okay. The next one. We get into ruts when my spouse, where I get a comment box filled with complaints and criticism every day. I try to sort through them and respond, but it gets overwhelming. I feel shut down. I left Friday night and took a time out with her assent, and we both did much better. She was actually positive towards me about the decision when I came back on Saturday. We are 4.5 years into this. We are both doing our work. She has PTSD and betrayed by me, in addition to trauma of her childhood. I feel unable to show up for her with compassion and kindness, and she tells me daily that she feels unloved and she is alone. I lean into intimacy the ways I can, but I fall short. I feel as if my shame resiliency and distress tolerance is being exceeded daily right now during the rut. I acknowledge she needs more from me than I can give today. And then the criticism and contempt starts again when I get home. All my kids are out of town for fall break, so there is no buffer or cushion. She is up and down a lot. And then it continues. Any advice? I usually just try to get away, ride my bike, take my dog out and pray and breathe, breaking up the Cartman triangle. But it is totally suffocating for me now. I need an oxygen mask again. She feels abandoned, and it can get triggered, those wounds in her. My criticism wounds from my father are festering and getting worse daily.
So I know he is because he comes to my Friday break. He comes to my Friday group, and he's probably gonna get sick of me saying this, but dude, that's exactly what we're gonna be covering over at the boot camp. Everything that you just identified is totally what we're gonna be covering. But here's the deal. Women, and this is in general. So not every woman is like this, and not every man is like that. But I'm talking more about feminine energy or feminine essence and masculine essence. Okay. When love is flowing in her life, everything is going to fall into place. And when that happens, she is going to be vulnerable. And when she's vulnerable, she will open up like a flower. And when she doesn't feel vulnerable and she feels like things are dangerous, she's going to close up. And the way that she then deals with that is pointing out all the things that she wants you to change, not because she's trying to tell you that you are a beep and a beep, beep, beep hole, but that if you can change those, then she'll feel safe and she can open back up again. The challenge for men is that we feel like we are trying to do our best and we're driven by like purpose. And so when we're told that we're not measuring up in some particular way, that, as you identified, hits against your rejection and your wounds from the past. And so then you get defensive and you want to challenge that. And then when you get defensive, she doesn't feel safe, so she closes up. So it becomes this spiral that both of you are playing into. And I have clients draw this circle on the board sometimes, and it's really hard. It's a circle. So who starts it and who continues it? There's no beginning and no end. It just somebody does something, and then the other person does this, and blah blah blah. Okay, so this is a really, really challenging thing for a lot of the men that I work with, because they are tired of being told that they're falling short, that they're not enough, that they are not measuring up, and they then get angry. They pull away. Oftentimes what men do is they pull away, which is the last thing that a woman needs you to do, is to pull away, because then she definitely doesn't feel safe, right? So we pull away and try to figure out what we're gonna do with all this stuff. This is a practice that takes time. This is not, I'm going to tell you how to do it, but this doesn't happen like that. So part of that is finding a way to be grounded and completely present in your body, and to be able to hold space. One person said you're like the frame, and she's like the ping pong ball going inside all over. There's so much emotion and all that stuff, and you are just holding space and recognizing that what she's trying to tell you is not that you don't measure up, but that she needs you in her life, that she wants to feel safe with you, and she misses the time when she did feel safe with you, and she misses when that you were able to be open and honest with each other. She's missing that, and she's telling you that in a way that comes across as she says you're not measuring up, but that's not what she's really saying, but we interpret it that way, right? So we hold space and we honor there's probably some truth to what she's saying. There's probably some things like she's mad that I haven't taken the garbage out, and That's a symbol of, and we're like, it's just the freaking garbage. Why are you so mad? No, that's a symbol of you said you were going to do something and you didn't do it. So now this is a symbol of the lack of integrity that there exists right now, right? So if I sit with that and say, okay, that's probably true. And even if it's not true, we can honor and hold space for that's the story that she's telling herself as a way of protecting herself. So that the embodiment of being able to stay grounded, not going into fight or flight, being able to have empathy and breathe is the secret to it. Most men don't know how to do that, and most men have never been taught how to do that, and most men have never seen a guy do that, and so they don't know how to do that. And so part of the training that I try to help guys do is help them learn how to do that, and we practice with each other. There will be times when you're going to say, hey, I need a break. I need to go. And I love that you did that with consent isn't the right word, but you guys made an agreement that you did that. But to always come back, right? There are times when this is so overwhelming and I'm flooded and I need some time, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to try that again. So I hear you, and I hear that it's overwhelming, and I hear that it's frustrating. And I hear that what you're hearing is that you're not enough and there's something wrong with you. And that's, I don't believe what she's really trying to convey to you. I can't speak for your wife, but I can, been doing this with a lot of E-Trade partners, and what they're really trying to say is I miss you.
So Troy, I was thinking, because it talked about, I get a comment box filled with complaints and criticism every day. And I was thinking, I know for sure that if I'm focused on gratitude, my outlook on things is very different. And if I had and I don't even know if it's a real complaint box, or if that's a metaphor, but if like I would shut down. I could not take in all that negativity. I've shared before on webinars that I haven't listened to the news in years because it was so toxic and negative. I needed not to hear that. So I am very careful about what I take in. But for both of you, if it isn't 10 things of gratitude that I'm sharing about us and our relationship and things on a daily basis, and if there's one thing that I'd like to work on and not have it be a complaint or criticism, but could it be something of like, I'd like for the two of us to problem solve about this, because this is a sticking point. And you talked about triggers. If I'm triggered, guess what? That's data for me. It is not somebody else's. If Troy triggers me, that means that something Troy did, poked at something in me, and that's data. And I can go, oh, the story I told myself when Troy did that is he's abandoning me, and I can go to Troy and go, hey, that was like, I'm feeling abandoned right now. You did this or said this, and I just want to, clarify, is that what you meant to do? I know Troy well enough to go, he would not ever go, yeah, I was intentionally trying to hurt you and abandon you and, be gone. It was, like, oh, I didn't even know that, when I dropped the call, whatever it is. But there's an opportunity for dialogue about problem solving. You guys can stay in this, right? I mean, 4.5 years of being in a rut. Oh my God. Like, like you have deep carved ruts, and you guys can keep doing this, and it can be horrible and uncomfortable for the two of you, or nothing changes if nothing changes. And I always say it's the negative two step. When one of you changes the choreography, guess what? The other one either keeps doing it, and you guys are or the other one goes, oh wait, let me participate in in a different choreography. But you can keep asking questions, and if you don't take action that is different, nothing will change. Nothing. I mean, that's just the reality. So okay, thanks Troy for being here. I'm in recovery. We are living together but separately. We get along until we have fights over the past affairs, which were hurtful, especially my ex calling my affair partners low-hanging fruits and devaluing them. I want to create a safe place for my brain to heal. How do you ground yourself that I'm not triggered? And two, do I listen and hear that she is done, even though she gives me mixed messages. So a couple of questions in there.
Well, I can't speak for your partner. So the fact that she's bringing stuff up obviously tells me that there's some unresolved stuff around that for her or him, whoever that is. I know that that is a hard hurdle for a lot of people to get over with the past. And I was just talking to a person the other day, and I'm like, at some point, we have to understand that that's the past, and we have to bury it like we do somebody who died, and we have to bury it, and then we can go back and visit the grave every once in a while, put flowers and grieve. But if we are going to heal, we got to move forward and not stop dealing with all that stuff that's happened in the past. That's easier said than done. Everything we're saying today is easier said than done, but whatever. So there, there's situations where why partners still live together even after the divorce, financial differences, that kind of stuff. So I guess part of my question is, well, what do you want? What do you want for you? And what I'm hearing is that you get in fights over past affairs, and there's there's a way to not get in a fight over past affairs. And when she brings it up, you say, that sounds really hard. And that sounds really hard. I'm not going to talk about that anymore. I hope that you can go find someone who can process that with you. But I'm not going to argue about that, because I hate the conflict that it brings up. So I'm not going to talk about that anymore. So that's one way to do it. Kind of depends on with you wanting to get back together with her, then the two of you are going to have to figure out, well, how do we move forward? The question is, what do you need so that you can move forward and leave these past women behind? Like, what do you need, and how can I help? Or maybe I can't help, but is there something I can do that would help us be able to lay that to rest? What are your thoughts, Terry?
Well, I was like, so I was playing this in my head and going like, I'm going like, your affair partners were, like they're just scum and they're, snarky, whatever, they're skanky, whatever, and you're going, no, they're not, and I'm going like, if that's the scenario you're getting into, like, I understand the hurt for the betrayed partner and wanting to devalue them. Like I often share with betrayed partners, the affair partner is the easy enemy, because like then it isn't making you you're not having to take responsibility for the actions because it's still the affair partner. No, like there wouldn't have been an affair partner if you hadn't decided to step out on the relationship. So that your partner's still in it. I mentioned a bit ago, when there's indifference, when I don't care, because love and hate are on the opposite sides of the same coin, but indifference, that's really where things separate. So I hear that you are in recovery. I'm also kind of wondering where you are, like how much recovery work you've been doing. We've got lots of resources, the drop-in groups Troy mentioned. He hosts the Friday morning one, but there's lots of Sex Addiction 101. There's a Sunday night group. There's different ones on our site. There's betrayed partner groups, as well. But you guys, we mentioned the rut a few minutes ago. You guys can get into a rut of like, she brings this up and she's probably looking for connection. She wants you to go, yeah, they were terrible. And like, I really choose, I don't know, there's a reason, but at some point going like, yeah, we rehashing all of this. It happened. You can't make it unhappen, but how do you move forward? What are you doing that shows that you are a person of integrity? That's how you move forward from where you are now. You can't change that. But defending the affair partners, probably not a great option, unless you're going like, hey, it wasn't them, it was me. That would be like, okay, it was my I take complete ownership of that. They participated, but it was on me that I chose to step out in the relationship. That would be something. But I really think, what are you guys each doing to get support around this? And even if you break up, because you're like in and out, I mean, that's a challenging place to be in, but you can put the relationship in safe harbor for 30 days and go like, I'm going to work on me. I'm going to work on just not acting out as abstinence. Recovery takes 2 to 5 years. So, the in-between period is, sobriety, and you start getting, a clue about these things, and you start to live differently. You show up differently. That's what partners are looking for, is like, I look different, and that's my actions, are showing that I can be a person, of integrity. So, but it does take time, because we sure haven't lived like that, along the way. Okay, betrayed. Both my partner and I have individual therapeutic support, 16 weeks out from discovery. So very early in the process. We've been together for a year and a half, unmarried, no children. Am I nuts for taking this recovery journey with him, given we're not married and don't have any children together? We live with each other in house separation, essentially. I did see a future with him. We're planning on discussing having a child this December. The talk is on hold since discovery, even though I'm 40 years old and the clock is ticking, for biological children.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a tough,
Yeah.
like, I can understand am I nuts for even thinking this,
No, you're not nuts. We call that codependence.
Mm-hmm.
You love him and you care about him and you see the light and the good parts of him, and now you've discovered there's a dark side to this dude, and now you're wondering if that's worth making the risk for things to change. I can tell you that there are guys who jump into recovery feet first, and they do the things, and they make amends, and they change, and their relationship with their partners are beautiful and happier than I've ever seen. And then there are some that don't. So you're not nuts because you're considering taking this journey. I'm so happy that both of you have therapeutic support. What you're going to be wanting to look for are milestones along the way that shows you that things are happening, that he's following through on the things that he says that he's going to do, that he's not lying. That's the theme that's been happening today, that he's not lying, even about stupid stuff. Like, he's being open and honest, and having some milestones that you can have the conversation with him about that and say, like, these are the things that I'm going to be looking for. I'm going to review them in a month from now, and then 2 months from now, and 6 months from now. And if at any time these are not happening, I'm probably going to be out. And you're not doing that irrationally. You're not doing that impulsively. This is something that you've really been thinking things through, and it gives him a chance to show up and be the man he was born to be in the first place. But I also hear that the clock is ticking. So you're not nuts, though. You love him. And that's why we don't believe in codependence, because codependence conveys a message that you are nuts and that you're sick. You're sick for wanting to be in a relationship, and you're not. We're wired for connection, and we want to have hope for each other. So
I concur. Codependence, yes. If you haven't, there's a podcast. Dr. Rob did a podcast, but we talk about it a lot on the webinar. So yeah, it's definitely not pathologizing partners. You love them. You see the good. You understand now after 16 weeks. The things that he was doing that were not esteemable. So, but if he is actually doing the work, he can make progress. And that, I always say it's his actions. What are you seeing? Not, what he is saying. So So I betrayed my wife and we went through a full disclosure with the polygraph. Nevertheless, my wife still distrusts me because I have a hard time breaking my habit of hiding the truth going forward. I am 9 months sober from porn, but I still feel the need to hide the truth and to test boundaries. I feel that my inner child is still running the show out of fear in response to an emotionally abusive childhood. Until I can get brave enough to be fully honest with her, we will not be reunited. What can I do to speed the process of our healing? We have a residential treatment program for guys like you, and I'm being completely serious. We get guys who are, you know, are abstinent because if you're still lying and having all of those issues, you're maybe making some progress. But we work on the underlying issues. The childhood stuff, yes, but it's also what is in this moment keeping you from being truthful. There's a reason you're choosing to lie. There's some dividend to it, even if it's like, well, then she won't be mad at me, or we can do it from, I don't want to hurt her. Well, it's going to come back and bite you. So we have a residential treatment program, 14, 21, or 28-day length of stay, and we help guys. You want to do it speedier. Otherwise recovery, like I said, 2 to 5 years of, but it's how much work are you doing? How many 12-step meetings are you going to? Have you done steps 4 through 9? Are you doing 10, 11, 12 on a daily basis? How often are you talking to your sponsor? How often are you working with your qualified professionals? But she's got no reason right now. You are not building trust. You are still lying. So, so you can't expect her to trust you when you are not trustworthy.
Yes, Stephen R. Covey said you can't talk yourself out of a problem you behaved yourself into. So you've done some things, full disclosure, polygraph, those kind of things, which is great. You're 9 months sober from porn. Of course, she doesn't trust you. And I use the analogy of the trust jar. So there's a jar and there's marbles in it, and the more trust we earn, the more marbles get put in the jar. And then when we behave in a way that makes her not trust us, then she takes a handful of the marbles out. The challenge is that the jar may have been 100% full at one point in your life, especially before discovery and all that. Moving forward, it will never be at 100% again. It just won't. It could be 99%. It could be 95%, and you can have a wonderful, fulfilling, happy relationship and have it not be 100%. But the way that you speed up the process is having integrity, doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it, telling the truth impeccably, not covering up. And that again, like I said before, we have to work through the shame. The shame is convincing you, especially the politician, that if you tell the truth, it's going to be bad. So you got to hide it. And you have to be able to face the politician and say, no, I'm going to tell the truth no matter what. I think you were probably in the Friday men's group that we had last week, and the mantra is, I'd rather lose you than lie to you. I'd rather lose you than lie to you. And a lot of guys are like, I'd rather lie to you than lose you, and that's not how that works, right? So the mantra is, I'd rather lose you than lie to you. And having a guy really get that in his heart and say, I have to be honest, is part of it. But it's going to take time, one marble in the jar every day, and that it's just going to take time.
So we've got 2 more questions, and I think we can get through those. How is recovery defined? My partner is sexually sober and working with a CSAT and a coach. He's 4 months out from discovery and sexual sobriety. He uses the phrase, I'm in recovery. So I rewind what I just said a few minutes ago. He has weekly, if not daily, integrity issues, including but not limited to deflection, gaslighting, minimization, and angry outbursts when I point out a lie or an integrity blip. At what point is someone in recovery during the process? So I also put in the chat. So Scott and I did a webinar on dealing with slips. But we talked specifically about, what is recovery. And I don't hear, and I'm a big 12-step fan, because guess what? Like, there are, 12-step meetings, you work with a sponsor, you do the housekeeping, steps 4 through 9. If you do the work, working with a coach, all fine. Working with a CSAT, all fine. But these are 24/7 issues. You talk about he's got integrity issues. That's the 24/7 issue. So we don't learn to do things differently. But with all due respect, you are very early in the process, and hopefully you're starting to see, some changes, along the path. But the more work we do, the more we change, so an hour with a coach and an hour with a CSAT for a 24/7 issue is, you're not loading up, you're not front loading. So, some people use 3 to 5 years for recovery. I really believe in the 2 to 5 years. I really do think that people, if they're doing the work, can change. But it isn't just like, well, I'm just going to not act out for 2 years and then I'm going to be magically better. So, thoughts?
Yeah, so there's a difference between sobriety and recovery. One of the check-in questions that I have the guys do in all the groups that I do is, where are you in recovery? Because it's not black and white. I could have one toe in recovery. I could be all in recovery. I think what he's trying to tell you is like, hey, I'm in recovery, and yet he has a lot of work to do. So it's a difficult question. The guys don't even know how to answer that. Like, where am I in recovery? But it's a moment of self-reflection. Where am I in recovery? Am I all in today? Am I being completely honest? Am I trying to take a fearless and moral inventory of my defects and the behaviors that I've done? Am I taking a look at how my behaviors have impacted other people? Am I finding ways to be able to stay sober and managing my emotions in different ways other than the ways that I did that before? All of that is part of what recovery is. And so that it's not black and white. It's a pretty extensive issue, but what I'm hearing is that he's got maybe a toe in there and he's got some more work to do.
And he's 4 months. Like, these issues started before age 10. So depending on how old they are, these are decades old, so there's a misperception of, and this is for the addicts too. If I just stop doing the problematic behaviors, then I'm going to be all good, it's all going to be good. And it's not. Like, that's now the real work starts, is like, how do we learn to live in the world, with all of life's challenges? Because those don't go away. In fact, they feel more, because all of a sudden we actually have to deal with them. So but betrayed partner, what are you doing for you? Like, I hear he's seeing a coach and a CSAT. What are you doing to take care of you, for healthy boundaries for you, for support for you, for regulation for you, regardless of what he's doing? I would really, invite you to look at that. And I did put the previously recorded webinars, that have some information for you on that. So, last question. Betrayed partner here. My partner says he's practicing AVR, but most of what I'm receiving on this end is regurgitation of what I just said, followed with, I understand. This feels incomplete, and he seems stuck at this level of understanding. How can I get unstuck? Acknowledging the issue, validating, and the 5 primary feelings of reassurance that you will help her heal. Like, the I understand feels like I understand feels dismissive. What are your thoughts, Troy?
I don't know what AVR means. Do you?
So it's acknowledge the issue, validation of her feelings using the 5 primary feelings, and reassurance that you will help her heal.
Oh,
So
thank you.
AVR is, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
That's
You
okay.
put it in caps for
I
me
know.
even, and I still missed it. My gosh. I apologize.
But now you know
Well,
what it is.
I can tell you that I'm practicing AVR. Like, I can tell you that I'm practicing playing tennis all day long. But is it having the effect, or is there seeming improvement? So AVR seems like it's probably a tool for empathy, but if I'm not doing it sincerely, it's just an activity. It's just a rote assignment. So part of what we've talked about today is that shame unravels our ability to have empathy. So if I'm feeling defensive, if I'm feeling angry, if I'm feeling like I don't want to hold space for you, and then I use the AVR or whatever other method of empathy, it's not going to work. And you're going to feel like you're talking to a parrot. And that's not going to work. So what that means is AVR and the other empathy tools are not bad, but the heart has to be in it, right? So, and you can say, hey, that I can hear that you're trying, and that's not what I need. So here's what I need. Can you help me get that need met? Because you validating is not enough. So here's what I need. Can you do that?
Yes, and that I was thinking the same thing. And I would ask your partner to strike the I understand, because I'm sure that you don't feel that your partner understands. Like that feels like a disconnect. And so but perhaps say it would be more helpful, can we try this? I use a lot of let's problem solve together. So I see that you're doing this, and this part of it helps and this part does not. So can we try something else? But be very specific. I go back to, like, this happened before age 10. So you have a 6-year-old that you're trying to teach how to do this differently, and you go, I shouldn't have to do this, and you're right, and this is where you're at. So this is what it is happening. But what is it, with this that does not feel authentic? I understand would be a problem for me, but what is it for you, and how can you help him? Because he's probably going like, yeah, I'm doing it. Look, I'm doing ABR. I understand. And on some level, head understands because he's just acknowledged that, but heart isn't understanding. And so, for him to learn how to go, oh, I remember a time when I felt sad. And so now I'm going like, oh, I'm in my sad. And I'm not going to tell you, oh, I remember when I was sad and you should hear all about that. It's like, no, I'm going to that place of where I'm sad. And so I can go, yeah, like I can see on your face that you are showing me how I also have felt, so don't give up hope, but also, like, yeah, hopefully he's teachable and that you can give him some guidance about what would be more useful, in this situation. Okay. Thank you, Troy, for being here. Thanks, everyone. Betrayed Partner Work Group starts today on seekingintegrity.com. And then Troy's work group will start in November, and Sex Addiction 101 also starts in November. So check those all out. Bye, everyone. This will be posted with the other videos on seekingintegrity.com. Bye, everyone. See you next week.